Welcome to Chapter 7. We're going to focus on measurement and scaling in this chapter. First, talk about measurement. Okay, we've done measurement in other realms of our life. You see the tape measure here down below, but here we're going to be measuring constructs and using scales to do that. So constructs are unobservable concepts or ideas. They're in our minds and actually supported by a neurochemical network in our brains, but we can't surgically remove those. We have to measure them by asking questions of human beings and then gauging the intensity of their response, putting that on a measurable scale. So this is the steps in the process. This organizes really what our chapter will be about, developing these ideas, constructs like attitudes toward the brand or purchase intention, coming up with a theoretical definition for that, and then an operational definition, and then developing a multi-item scale, and then evaluating the consistency or the reliability of that, and its truthfulness, its validity, and then applying it in a research setting. Going back to the information value chain, we know that we have data and value increases as we move across the information value chain. So we go from data to information to knowledge, then decision-making, and finally implementing action. And George Washington is there to represent what comes to managers or business owners when they do that right. But for researchers, we're going to the decision-making and focusing on constructs, developing models and methods. And that enables us to explain things to managers in a way that they can gain wisdom about making decisions. So this is a schematic diagram. I want you to focus on the middle part here. This is from a study worked on and published in the Journal of International Marketing a few years ago. So it was, the informants were new entrepreneurs in China and also India. And so we asked them questions about how they're running their firms. Capability development. Okay, that is a construct I want to focus on here. So there were 4 questions that define this. And here it was investment in international customer support capabilities. Okay, so that was the name of the construct. So we're trying to gauge how much investment they're making in their international customer support capabilities. So when we asked 4 questions, we found that that kind of triggered a release of evidence about their investment in international customer support capabilities. And so that was the construct. There are other constructs here, and actually a one-item construct here, proprietary technology at founding. But here we see that, that one-item construct here, we try not to use one-item constructs. We prefer to use multi-item constructs in research because it grounds our understanding of the construct in a more stable way. So here the questions were: to satisfy your most important international customers, how aggressively did you invest in technology development know-how? And so we have Cronenbach's alpha here. So this is 0.72. We want these values to be above 0.7. So that's a measure of how correlated these 4 items are. There are the means of, and these are on a 7-point scale, with 7 being more favorable. And there was standard deviation here. And then the factor loading. This is from a multivariate statistical test. But the questions here had to do with technology development, procedures dealing with vendors, processing equipment, and finally servicing procedures. So those 4 questions captured this construct of international customer support capability. There were others here in the study as well, but the point here is to show that we had 4 items that captured the measurement of one construct. So we talked about single item scales, how multiple item scales would be preferred. A reflective scale was what we had here in the previous study. So when we ask questions, it kind of triggers a release from a human being of evidence that we can use to define this underlying construct. A formative scale is basically it's not happening in the mind of a customer. It's a more objective development here. And so this has to do with life stress. And so job loss contributes to that, divorce contributes to that, but recent accident contributes to that. So it would be difficult to come up with some scale that would be some perception of job loss. You've either lost it or you haven't, or you're divorced and you're not. So that's a formative. And most of the time we'll be using reflective constructs here. So measuring these constructs, scaling involves creating a continuum upon which measured objects are located. So when we have structured data, we're talking about numbers here. When we have qualitative data, we do not have numbers. Okay, this unstructured data needs to be converted to some structured data or through an interpretation process. Primary scales of measurement that we have here: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. And probably most preferred here is ratio. So here in a race, we would have, it's more useful for us, let's put it that way. So ratio scaling, the 0 point means something. Okay, so here the third place, the racer finished in 16.1 seconds. Interval scale is some judge's rating of a performance that might have been given a 74 by a panel of coaches. Then the ordinal is the rank order of the winners. So this runner came into third place. So that was the place obtained, but you don't really know the distance between the second and third place, or the third and the first place finishers. So that eludes you in ranking. And then the nominal scale, this was just numbers assigned to runners, and didn't really have a meaning. It was just to categorize them or keep them separate from other runners. Here, continuing these illustrations, nominal scale might be jeans brands here. Ordinal scaling might be what rank do you give in terms of preference for these jeans. And here you can see the most favored would be Guess jeans. Interval scale, so rating, the 0 point does not have a meaning of 0. It just means it's relative preference. So here we have these ratings here. And then we have ratio scale here. So the price in dollars for the jeans, $30, $48, $0 or free. That has meaning in this case. Okay, with interval scaling, the interval scale starting point doesn't matter. Okay, it's relative. So here you can see on a 6-point scale, the intention to purchase here, it winds up being the same degree, but you get different numbers here across the 6-point scale and the 5-point scale. So that 0.9 is what you have with the 5-point scale. 1.9 would be the 6-point scale. So again, the relative aspect of the interval scaling here. Nominal scales, here's some examples, just categorizing people: married, single, separated, divorced, widow, like or dislike chocolate, stores that you go to. Okay, we would have ordinal scales here, rankings of services provided by a bank, inside the bank, drive-in, ATM, debit card, etc. here. And then interval scales. Here how likely are you to recommend the Santa Fe Grill to a friend? Definitely will not recommend, definitely will recommend. So again, it's a relative scaling there for responses using interval scale. Ratio scales, the 0 point matters. Okay, please circle the number of children you have under 18 years of age. You might not have any kids, so that's 0, and then you might have 1 to 7 or more, okay? When we look at scaling techniques, we have comparative scales. So we have compared comparison, rankings, and then constant sum scaling. And then over here, we have non-comparative scales, continuous rating, and then itemized rating scales. We'll take a look at these now. Okay, paired comparisons. When you're asking 10 pairs of shampoo brands and which one of the two brands do you prefer? So Zermatt and Zermatt, there's no comparison there. They're the same. But then you have Finesse and Zermatt, and there would be a preference rated there. Vidal Sassoon and Zermatt, a preference would be rated there. Okay, and on. So the upper half of the matrix is redundant to the lower half here, but you can use these pair comparisons for research purposes. Using rank order scaling here, ranking 10 objects, that's more effortful than ranking three. So you need to be aware of this if you have 10 or more objects to rank. This is going to take time and effort by your respondents, and fatigue can accumulate as they're taking your surveys. You don't want to overtax your respondents. Constant sum scaling, the responses sum to 100. So here in segment 1, in terms of the attributes of bathing soap, mildness, lather, shrinkage, price, all the way down to cleaning power. Price here was given the most points here in terms of importance and purchase, and they all sum up to 100. And even though if you're doing an online survey, you can use program coding to prompt people to correct their answers to make sure that they sum to 100. If you're on a paper survey, some of your people will not give the effort to sum things to 100 correctly. So be watchful of that. Okay, as we go across borders, our scaling becomes more relevant. Different cultures use different point scales differently. Here we have continuous rating scales as a non-comparative rating scale, and then itemized rating scales here. So we'll take a look at these three: semantic differential, behavioral intention, and then Likert. Continuous rating scale, it can be just on a line here and you mark it off. Okay, then your computer code or maybe even your tape measure would actually assign a value here. You can have a scale underneath your points here, but as you see here in this illustration, not all the dots go over all the way to the end, and so structuring your survey so it's meaningful to respondents matters with continuous rating scales. Semantic differential scales, you might have one word knowledgeable, the other end unknowledgeable. It's best if they're the negation of the other word. Otherwise, you get into it's imbalanced many times, or it can be confusing for your respondents. Behavioral intention scale. Here, there's percentages assigned to the likelihood of taking an action. So 90 to 100%, 50 to 89, 10 to 49, and then less than 10% chance here shopping at these different stores. A Likert scale, these are frequently used in psychology research and marketing research. Usually there is a statement, and then there's an agree or disagree scaling for that. So it's definitely disagree, definitely agree, 7-point scales here. And so I buy many things with a credit card. You would definitely disagree with that or definitely agree. But these are easier for respondents to give answers to. They understand there's definite disagreement or definite agreement and some range in there, and they can mark that. Your scales can be configured on a survey in different ways: horizontally here, with numbers horizontally, vertically here, also anchored with every space that could be an answer. They can also be presented here with left or right numbers to 0. In that case, there'd just be a rescaling to convert them to be comparable to other scales. And if it was going to a 1 to 7 scale with that previous scale, you would just add 4 to each of the items, and it would move that -3 to +3 scale directly to the 1 to 7 scale. You need to do that for each respondent in the data set. Balance scales, this is what you want to use. extremely good, extremely bad. You might be in some unusual situation where you're trying to spread out the data where people are giving maybe with very highly performing products. You're trying to spread out the response distribution. But again, this gets complicated because then, very bad is not the antithesis of extremely good. So stay with the balance scales. Graphic rating scales, I see these at the Denver airport. At McDonald's, you can report on your service there. These are also very effective. They're quick and easy. People understand it. They can give a quick response. Also, illiterate consumers can respond easily. And if you're collecting data in foreign countries in particular, there could be a higher percentage of illiteracy in those countries, but you can still get your responses here with these smiley faces. Okay, on scale evaluation, we're going to take a look at reliability, which corresponds to consistency of repeated measure of using that scale. And then validity, the truthfulness or accuracy of your scale. So in terms of reliability, doing test and retest and making comparisons gives an assessment of how reliable that set of questions are. You can have an equivalent form, so different questions, but similar, and then make comparisons. You can also, to address internal consistency, you can divide the questions that are related to a construct in half and then see how those questions correlate with each other, and they should be high. Finally, coefficient alpha, you're looking for values of 0.70 or above. So this is a measure of the average intercorrelation among the items defining a construct. To increase reliability, you want to keep it simple. That's basically, don't try to overtax people. Your questions should be short, direct, to the point, and easily understood. And just keep doing that across your survey. That lowers the workload for your respondents as well. In terms of validity, this is what you're after in your study, truthfulness. Okay, so here as we look at these target patterns down here, this one is unreliable, perhaps so unreliable it's invalid. And on this one, it has fair reliability and fair validity. So it's kind of tightening here around the bullseye. This has fair reliability, but invalid. So it's not really hitting the bullseye here. This has good reliability, a tight shot group here, but it is not hitting the bullseye. This is what you would want, hitting the bullseye and having a tight shot group around the bullseye. So good reliability, good validity. Okay, so when we assess validity, here's an example. We're trying to understand, are we measuring what we set out to measure? So if you want to know if your motorcycle will be purchased, you don't ask if respondents like the motorcycle. So they might like it, but there could be some factors that keep them away from buying it. That might be the price, for example, or being able to sit on the motorcycle. It might be too big for the customer. So you have not measured purchase intention when you just ask liking. So you'd have to correct that and really ask about purchase intention. So to increase validity, present your questions in greater detail, make them complete, use a reliable instrument, and you want to make sure that through your set of questions, you're covering the subject matter related to the construct completely. Misleading scaling formats. This is a common mistake in initially writing questions, and you need to watch for it. So the key here is that the researcher might include the word "and" in the question. And if you have the word "and," then you have a double-barreled question. So I think you can see how awkward this might be to respond for a consumer. How satisfied are you with your cell phone company's price and service? Well, the price might be great, but the service might be terrible. And so the respondents are left in a quandary. Do they average those? Do they just respond on price, or their most negative one, or the most positive one. So these wind up being a mess. Okay, so no double barrel questions. And you really identify those during your editing and review of your survey and your pre-test of your questionnaire with a small group of respondents. They'll tell you that, hey, I was confused with this question. And then you'll see, okay, how did that get in there? Okay, a leading question influences the respondents' answers. You don't want that, and so it's going to bias them. An example here is retail experts agree that consumers should comparison shop. Do you agree? If they answer against the retail expert, it's going to take some strong commitment to do that. You don't want that. A loaded question suggests a socially desirable outcome. So should Americans buy foreign cars that take away jobs from Americans? Asking that question, you're going to get different responses about, how favorable or unfavorable are different brands such as Nissan or Toyota or Mercedes-Benz. Thank you for your attention today, and we look forward to being with you here in our upcoming study, questionnaire design.